Tackle today, Matt and Mark Justice bringing you all of the charts, the key news, everything you need to know in a concise manner. Market's taking a little bit of breather ahead of the NVIDIA earnings right now. Matt, as we look at the technical setups of the charts right now, we see some hesitation ahead of Matt having gold up as his first chart. What a shock. What a shock there as he looks at gold. Seeing some hesitation, right? This is very normal after an extended move up. Matt, not a surprise at all. We're seeing some hesitation here ahead of NVIDIA earnings, is it?
No, it's not. There were two big news items in the last couple of weeks. Number one was Jackson Hole. Obviously, we've covered that. We've went through that. The market has a very good understanding of what the Fed is going to be doing in September, and most likely what the Fed is going to continue to do post September. And I do think there's a general understanding that I don't know if we want to put the Fed put back in play, Mark, but I'm starting to see a little bit of analysis out there on any downward movement in price. Fed's going to act out there. So I do think there's a little bit of confidence on the Fed. We'll see if that confidence is justified as we navigate the next couple of weeks with the central bank. But the second one was NVIDIA's earnings report, and NVIDIA, from an earnings perspective, from a thematic perspective, they're just the most important stock to the marketplace, obviously this week with the earnings, but I would say that's the case for this earnings season and earnings seasons over the last year and a half as well. Do they increase in guidance? I think they do beat. The question is, do they increase in guidance? And that's going to be the variable here. And the market is hesitating a little bit in front of NVIDIA, in my estimation. After NVIDIA, you really don't have major reports until you start getting into next week's reports with the labor market. And so you enter into a little bit of a clean environment from a technical perspective. And so do we get a breakout following NVIDIA? I think that would look fairly good. Now, from the rest of the market, just seeing a lot of similar broad-based hesitation here. NASDAQ obviously trying to fight some support builds here, trying to fight for that little bit of the high base. Do we see a pullback here? Do we see a high base breakout following NVIDIA? I think that's going to be a very interesting technical conversation. When you're looking at RSP, obviously the general market equal weighted index, that did break out of a multiple time frame this weekend, looks pretty good, but you're also slightly overextended here, and you would expect a little bit.
I was going to say, Matt, this feels less NVIDIA on the broad market and just, hey, we just made a big move. Let's take a minute to digest.
I'm not sure your random healthcare stock or consumer staples stock or utility stock or industrial stock cares too much about NVIDIA. I'm not sure about that. I know the aggressive sectors do. I know the AI space does. I know it's the most important stock to the market, but that means the most important stocks to the big areas of the market, those large moats, right? I absolutely agree with you. I think when you're looking at the rest of the market, I think you've just went from 162 up to 175 without any degree of hesitation. And so it's been a V-shaped recovery off that violation of support just recently. And so the market probably just needs to take a little bit of a breather up around that 175 level on the RSP there, Chucky.
Yeah, no, and absolutely. And so we'll continue to break down both the markets, NVIDIA, all of that, the charts, technical setups each and every day. And as we're doing this, and this is going to be a very important point of emphasis here at Tackle Trading, post-Fed pivot, how the economy does really determines, if you look back at history, on how markets do. And so it puts extra emphasis on economic data. We have labor market data next week, which is going to be really important from a narrative standpoint. Today, we had consumer confidence. The conference board put out their consumer confidence numbers. And overall, mixed report. The beat, right? You had a slight beat, so something slightly positive, basically from 102 to 103. But this quote from the conference board chief economist pretty much sums it up. Consumers are positive about business conditions as a whole, but they do have some concerns, labor, income, so, a mixed report. And I think that quote pretty much sums up the consumer right now, doesn't it?
I think that is a 100% accurate quote. We don't get a lot of 100% accurate quotes when it comes to, understanding the consumer against the economic conditions. And I think this sums it up really, really well. Consumers are positive about the trajectory, but there is still ongoing concerns, specifically on the labor side of the equation. And when you go in, you're absolutely right, Mark. When you go into a cutting cycle, the pure economic data becomes extremely important in the path of the marketplace. There's no doubt about that. But that's a long-term conversation, not necessarily a short-term conversation. I think in general, in the short term, I think we're tracking the technical side of the equation. In the longer term, medium to longer term, you're absolutely right. Making sure that I think it's as general as, do we achieve a soft landing or not? If we achieve a soft landing, this market's perfectly fine going into a cutting cycle, especially if you're simply just alleviating the restrictive territory due to inflation. If the market starts to show some signs that the economy is cracking, at that point you get a little bit more concerned.
Yeah, and so, not a narrative changer today, and so we will continue to track that story, very important story in the coming months. And while we track that story, stocks are gonna, they're gonna provide some tidbits of their own. We always highlight the three main stock stories. What do you have for us today?
Yeah, I think the number one stock story out there is Eli Lilly, the absolute healthcare giant juggernaut who should be a Mag 7 component. They are that important, especially in the healthcare space, but just an absolute juggernaut of a company out there. Their drug, weight loss drug, Zepbound, very expensive, by the way. They are actually releasing a one that's about half the cost, and they're doing that to combat rising demand, which there is a tremendous amount of rising demand for Zepbound, and also copycat versions that are coming out from a cheaper perspective, making sure that their patients get access to the genuine treatments directly through Eli Lilly. They're trying to control and corner the market a little bit. Eli Lilly comes out. I think it's good news. The market obviously will look upon that as a little bit of positive news. But once again, Eli Lilly's been on a just amazing run here, overextended coming into resistance. I'll talk about that here in a second. Hershey's cocoa prices going up. Chocolate sales going down a little bit, according to Citi, and I would go ahead and agree with that. Cocoa prices has been going up, and Hershey's gets a downgrade due to it from Citibank. And then on the third stock stories, there was a few individual components that had individual stock stories here today, Mark, but there was not a tremendous amount of stock stories here today. And there wasn't any earnings that were major market movers. You had a couple Canadian banks report earnings today, but it was a really laid back day from a stocks in the news perspective. But NVidia reports earnings tomorrow. We talked about it earlier in the tackle today. It's going to be the entire market conversation when it comes to tomorrow afternoon, and then obviously going into that Thursday market open to see how the market is responding specifically to NVIDIA's earnings. Once again, the conversation is really going to be about guidance, but NVIDIA, just got to be aware of it because it's going to be the number one stock story of this week, and most likely the number one market story of this week as well.
Yeah, Matt, commodities, as we look at commodities, seeing a lot of potential setups, gold, copper, silver specifically as potential actionable technical setups. We have a fundamental case for gold, all these things, technical setups, very cut and dry right now.
Yeah, the fundamental case is very, very crystal clear from a cutting cycle perspective. There is a very big lean when it comes to a bullish lean on gold, and gold setting up from a technical perspective as well. Real good high base type pattern, following with a multiple time frame breakout. On the industrial metal side of the equation, silver's trying to dial in a $30 breakout. A little bit of a consolidation right here. Once you do break out of 30, looks like a pretty simple journey up until about 32 with some open air above 32. And the commodity, I think, of the day here today, and you could really kind of look at them all doing a little bit of the same thing, but they're all not coming from the same position. Gold's at the all-time high, copper's coming from a low point, silver's coming from a mid-tier point, but they're all looking fairly similar in the last week. And that's what I think is important when we're looking at the commodity space, is they don't always run on the same gasoline, especially gold. Gold will beat to its own drum. But when it comes to the patterns that I'm seeing right now, I got a high base consolidation pattern on silver breaking out of a mid-tier opportunity at $30. I got a reversal situation with a high base going into a multiple time frame breakout, which looks really, really good above that 50 period moving average in my estimation on copper. You obviously got the multiple time frame high base breakout that you had on gold. So they all are running on a little bit of the same gasoline right now, which typically tells me we're having a macro conversation. And we've been having a macro conversation. When we have a macro conversation, a lot of these areas of the market will run on the same gasoline. And so when you're looking at kind of where, if you're looking at a dual approach to gold, silver, or copper, I do think you're also looking at the dollar here saying, okay, dollar's a little bit overextended. Dollar may form a little bit of a bear flag based pattern. It could consolidate a little bit further here as well. Dollar weakness, and I do think dollar weakness continues here. It does until those other central banks start telling us what they're going to be doing. What we do know is the central bank out of the United States is going to be a little bit aggressive early on in their cutting cycle. Dollars reflecting that. And so a lot of the commodities running on the same gasoline, that typically reflects a macro environment that usually you want to anchor against the dollar as much as you anchor against other anything else.
Yeah, in fact, the Fed, Mary Daly, was out yesterday saying she didn't see anything that could derail a September rate cut. That is a long way from data dependent at this point. Yeah, clearly telegraphing what they want to do.
We were clearly data dependent 2 weeks ago, but somehow, some way, the data that they saw in the last 2 weeks says, nope, we're good. We're good. We're good.
Indeed. We're going to continue these conversations in the Traders Lounge more in depth with our members. We have a fantastic community. Give us a like, a share, spread the word, and come give us a try. Go to tackletrading.com, sign up for that 15-day free trial today.